The Porsche Boxster has always made people uncomfortable, and not because it failed. It made people uncomfortable because it didn't follow the rules. From the moment it appeared, it forced Porsche fans to confront a question they weren't ready to answer. What happens when a car earns its place without leaning on history? When the Boxster arrived, most people thought they understood it instantly. Smaller, cheaper, less serious. A Porsche for people who couldn't reach the real thing. That assumption spread fast, and once it settled in, it became difficult to undo. But the truth is, the Boxster wasn't built to chase the 911. It was built to solve a problem Porsche couldn't ignore anymore. By the time the Boxster was being developed, Porsche was facing a harsh reality. The brand's identity was strong, but its future wasn't guaranteed. The 911 carried enormous emotional weight, but emotionally powerful cars don't always pay the bills. Porsche needed a new audience, drivers who wanted the experience without the intimidation. That meant building something approachable, but still unmistakably Porsche. This is where many fans misunderstood the intention. The Boxster wasn't a downgrade, it was a recalibration, a reminder that performance doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Instead of chasing bigger numbers, Porsche focused on balance, weight distribution, steering feel, driver connection. The kind of qualities that don't always show up on spec sheets, but become obvious the moment the road starts to curve. And that's exactly where things became awkward. Because once people actually drove the Boxster, the narrative started to crack. The car felt planted, predictable, almost effortless. There was no constant need to correct mistakes or fight the chassis. It didn't demand respect, it rewarded confidence. And for many drivers, that felt strange coming from a car that was supposed to be the lesser Porsche. The mid-engine layout played a huge role in this. It wasn't just a technical decision, it was a philosophical one. Porsche knew what that layout meant. It knew how it would affect balance, feedback, and control. Yet the brand rarely highlighted it in bold terms, almost as if drawing too much attention to it would raise uncomfortable comparisons. Because once you experience a well-tuned mid-engine car, it becomes hard to ignore the advantages. That's when the whispers began. Not official statements, not press releases, just quiet conversations among enthusiasts. Was the Boxster being limited on purpose? Was Porsche protecting the 911 by keeping a clear performance gap? No one could prove it, but the consistency of the gap made people suspicious. Every time the Boxster improved, the ceiling stayed just out of reach, and suspicion feeds curiosity. As online communities grew, the Boxster became a magnet for debate. Some defended it passionately, pointing to its driving purity. Others dismissed it as a compromise car, pretending to be something more. But the loudest opinions often came from people who never spent real time behind the wheel. The Boxster didn't suffer from lack of capability, it suffered from assumption. Then the conversation took another turn. Stories about reliability began spreading, often stripped of context and inflated by repetition. A few known issues became internet legends. Forums amplified fear faster than facts could keep up. For some buyers, doubt replaced curiosity, and suddenly the Boxster wasn't just misunderstood, it was avoided. But something interesting happened beneath the noise. Owners who actually lived with the car didn't walk away. They stayed, they drove, they defended it. Because the Boxster delivered something many modern cars struggle to offer: clarity. The steering spoke, the chassis responded. The experience felt honest, not overwhelming, not theatrical, just right. And quietly, generation by generation, the Boxster matured. Design improved, interiors refined, performance sharpened without losing balance. Porsche didn't try to reinvent it, they refined what already worked. And while critics argued online, the Boxster built a loyal following that valued feel over image, which raises an uncomfortable realization. The Boxster didn't need approval. It never did. It just needed time for people to stop judging it by what it wasn't, and start noticing what it actually was. But just as that understanding began to spread, a new question entered the picture, one that threatens to reset the entire conversation, because the future of the Boxster might challenge tradition more than it ever has before. And that's where the story takes another turn. As the Boxster continued to mature, something unexpected happened. The noise around it grew louder, but the car itself grew quieter, more confident, less interested in proving anything. While debates raged online, Porsche focused on refinement, and that contrast said more than any marketing campaign ever could. Later generations didn't try to win over skeptics with shock value. Instead, they doubled down on what the Boxster already did best. Balance sharpened, steering feel became more precise. The car felt composed even when pushed, not because it was aggressive, but because it was honest. For drivers who valued connection over status, the Boxster started making uncomfortable sense, and yet the stigma never fully disappeared. No matter how good the car became, it was still framed as a comparison, not judged on its own merits, but constantly measured against the 911. For some fans, that comparison was essential. It reinforced a hierarchy they weren't ready to let go of, because if the Boxster could stand on its own, then the idea of a single true Porsche suddenly felt fragile. That tension explains why the next chapter sparked such strong reactions. When Porsche began signaling a future shaped by electrification, the Boxster found itself at the center of the conversation, not officially announced, not fully denied, just enough speculation to make people nervous. For traditionalists, this felt like a breaking point. The Boxster was already seen as unconventional. Now it was being positioned as the first to step into unknown territory. To some, this confirmed their worst fears, but others saw something different. They argued that the Boxster was always about layout, balance, and driving feel, not nostalgia. If any Porsche could survive a major shift without losing its identity, it would be the one built around control rather than brute force. The same qualities that once made the Boxster controversial now made it adaptable. This split revealed something deeper. The Boxster didn't just divide opinions, it exposed how differently people define authenticity. For some, authenticity means preserving the past exactly as it was. For others, it means protecting the core experience, even if the tools change. The Boxster has always lived between those two interpretations, and that's why it continues to provoke debate. What's often overlooked is how intentionally Porsche has positioned the car. It's never been marketed as rebellious, never framed as a replacement. It exists quietly, confidently, letting drivers discover its value on their own. That strategy frustrates critics, but it builds loyalty among those who understand it. And that loyalty matters, because when you strip away the arguments, the Boxster tells a simple story. A car that prioritized balance in a world obsessed with extremes. A car that earned respect, not through dominance, but through consistency. A car that refused to shout, even when it had every reason to. In many ways, the Boxster reflects Porsche's most honest thinking. Not what looks best on paper, not what generates the loudest reactions, but what works, again and again, on real roads, with real drivers. That philosophy doesn't age quickly, and it doesn't need validation. The irony is hard to ignore. The very things that once made the Boxster controversial are now the reasons it feels relevant. As performance numbers climb and driving involvement becomes harder to find, the Boxster's clarity stands out more than ever. It never tried to be the loudest voice in the room. It just stayed true to what it was designed to do. And maybe that's why, after all these years, the Boxster still unsettles people. Not because it failed to live up to Porsche's legacy, but because it quietly redefined what that legacy could be. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into misunderstood cars, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow and lets us keep telling stories like this.